Alex, thanks very much for joining us. You recently did a survey, particularly focused around the sustainability side. Maybe just highlight some of the results of the survey, and it'd be interesting to just get your take on that.
So the objective was really to get views from key stakeholders in a range of organisations across the globe to really understand the views on the evolving nature of reporting and strategy of sustainability within their organisations. So that provided some really interesting insights from around the world. Some of the themes really that we identified were that the concept of ESG reporting is still not prioritised as highly as it should be, with a number of respondents believing that the ESG should have a high priority within their organisations, and showing the bit of a disconnect between the sort of chatter and theme of emphasis that it gets from a positioning point of view, but the actual practical reality of how much of a priority it is given within the organisations. With that, we also looked into asking them around the extent to which they feel stronger ESG reporting would be beneficial for their company, and over 80% of respondents agreed that that is an important part that would help to provide context of where their organisation sits and what efforts could be made to improve their performance across various components. But there is definitely sort of still a gap of where people believe it should be relative to where they would like it to be in the reporting of their organisation and the understanding of the various metrics, as it were. So one of the things we also asked about is how frequently people actually do report on ESG metrics, given the sort of ever-evolving and dynamic nature of the subject. And around 70% of respondents stated that they report on ESG less frequently than weekly. So again, with a number of these components being very dynamic, that importance of having the regular tracking and updating seems to be an aspect that would very much help decision making on asset management and strategy, both on sort of day-to-day operations, but also long-term impact on capex initiatives and redevelopment, etc.
And is your sense, Alex, that I guess people are beginning to see these challenges now more and move towards a point where they're having to act and really move forward and begin to report more and get more transparent in terms of the data?
Yes, and there's a number of methods that are really sort of underpinning that, or part of it is regulation or the need for shareholder reporting, which is to some extent being sort of forced upon companies. Likewise, consumers are also becoming more responsive to the transparency related to ESG and a brand or a retailer's position within that, and making choices sort of based on that level of transparency. So it's being sort of driven by a number of different angles within the stakeholder ecosystem, but it's also important to recognise there's sort of different levels of, say, maturity or understanding in different parts of the world, both from a consumer's perspective and what's important to them, but also the extent of sort of regulation or structure that the authorities and governing bodies from a governance perspective have in terms of their implications for the need for reporting and the level of detail required as well.
Where do you see kind of best practice heading at the moment, Alex?
So if you take some examples across the development world, then I guess the asset managers that have a very clear mandate around what their strategy is and how that drops down to every sort of level of the organisation are the ones that are typically excelling, and those where it's very strongly aligned to their underlying values and is very much the kind of corporate DNA that runs through the system. Similarly, when you take sort of more consumer facing brands, those that work with a high degree of transparency and clarity are the ones that are having a greater impact in terms of the way they operate and set themselves up, but also the kind of knowledge sharing and degree of transparency that they're helping others and peers in their industry understand what best practice is and how things can be enhanced. And then I guess you also get new components such as the B Corp accreditation, which again helps companies across a whole range of different dimensions and understand the different levers that they can implement in their organisation to help drive positive impact for people, planet, as well as underlying profitability as well.
Really interesting to catch up, and look forward to seeing, I guess, how these things develop over the next months and years. Alex, thanks very much for joining us.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard.